Tag, you're it. No, wait. I'm sorry. Hide and seek. Wait, I'm getting all these confused. I've been looking all over for Dan. I counted down to 5, and I can't find him anywhere. Dan, are you around? Where are you?
Red Rover. I called Wait, no, that's wrong too. Shoot. Hi. What are we playing? What's going on here?
I don't know. This is Positively Trek podcast, so I guess... wait, this isn't a game podcast, so I don't know why we're doing that. But anyway, welcome everyone to the podcast. I'm Bruce Gibson with Dan Gunther. Dan, now that I found you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Luckily, I was just hiding in my basement, not in the subterranean labyrinth underneath my house that was used in World War II. I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. But yeah, no, I'm doing good. Excited to talk some Trek today.
I hadn't thought about it until you said that, but I'm in my basement of the house, so I guess it's my little labyrinth down here because I do have to maneuver to get to this room that I'm in. So yeah, I'm just waiting for Jean-Luc to show up. Over here, Jean-Luc, over here. Anyway.
As long as, well, I won't say anything. I don't want to spoil the episode before we get to talk about it. So
No, you don't want to do that. So, well, let's go ahead and say that we're going to talk about episode 9 of season 2 of Picard called Hide and Seek. And this is where everybody says, oh, that's why you guys were pretending to do games, because of the episodes called Hide and Seek.
Of course. Gosh, they're so clever, those podcasters.
Gosh, it's like no wonder everybody listens to us. We're just so good at this. I mean,
boy.
No one saw this coming. I'm like, gosh, yeah. But anyway, before we talk about Picard, though, we want to touch on a few things in the news. And let's talk about a soundtrack to Star Trek Picard Season 2 that's coming out. So this is exciting news. We did get the soundtrack to Season 1, and now this is a 31-track collection from this current season, and it's available now as you're listening to this. It just released just days ago, and go check it out.
Yeah. The cool part about this is they have the full track listing, of course, for what's on the album. And based on the titles of the tracks, you can kind of see where we are in the season. And I'm not saying the later track names give away spoilers, but there's some fascinating things there that I'm curious exactly what they mean. There's obviously track 21. I won't say what the title is, but that one could be about what happens in this episode that we're going to be talking about. So the ones kind of after that, I'm like, ooh, some tantalizing titles there.
Yes. Yeah, we're not going to talk through the titles, so
they could be spoilers. We don't know for what exactly yet, but
yeah, I don't know. Now I'm really looking at them. They could be some light spoilers. You can read into them and totally be wrong, you know?
Totally. I will say I do love that they're including Fly Me to the Moon, if that is the instrumental that we got in the other episode, but also Shadows of the Night featuring Alison Pill. So her singing that wonderful rendition that we got a couple episodes back.
I love this because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play that really loud in my foyer because I have a 2-story foyer, and I'm going to stand at the top of the landing and lip sync to it as if I'm Alison Pill.
And amazingly, a spotlight's just going to hit you and you don't know where from, but
yes.
the band will come in and accompany you, and yeah, it'll be great.
And I'll walk down the stairs just like she did. And I'll do this all for my wife, and she'll just roll her eyes and go, whatever. And then she'll laugh. She'll laugh then. So I'm excited to listen to this. I enjoy all the music on Star Trek, so it's going to be fun. I'm glad that it's coming so soon. Like, it's not like we have to wait 6 or 9 months for a soundtrack to come out now.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. I might have to pick this up. That's one thing I've loved this season in Picard is the music as well. So
yes. I also love Star Trek Lower Decks, and season 2 is coming to Blu-ray on July 12th. And I'm excited about this, even though I can watch it all on Paramount Plus right now, which I have done. I've rewatch some of the episodes. I like that we're getting audio commentaries on 4 of the episodes and some other little, special features and stuff. And that's what I like about getting the disc is the extras that you get that you don't get in just watching an episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big collector of Star Trek on physical media, and I will definitely be picking up Lower Decks Season 2 on Blu-ray, not just for the visual quality of the episodes, which is always great and very consistent on Blu-ray, but like you said, these special features, the commentaries I'm especially excited about, but these other featurettes that are included here as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to review it here on the show. And,
oh, yeah.
I just haven't been one to buy much physical media. I've gotten all the Blu-rays for the new Star Trek. I have some Blu-rays from the old Star Trek. I don't even know if I told you this, but I did get the Blu-ray set for all 3 seasons of TOS not that long ago. But I don't have TNG, Deep Space Nine, or Voyager, and I only have season 4 of Enterprise.
Yeah, I have all the Blu-rays that they've put out. Of course, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, they've never done Blu-rays for because we'd love for them to remaster those in high definition, but that hasn't happened. But everything else that they've done, I have gotten the Blu-rays and have in high def. So all of TNG and Enterprise and the original series and even the animated series, oddly enough.
Actually, yeah, I do have the animated series on DVD. And so what I was talking more about was physical media. I don't have all that other, whether it's Blu-ray, DVD, even VHS of all those others. But to your point about Deep Space Nine and Voyager not being on Blu-ray, now that I'm doing my rewatch of DS9 on Paramount Plus, I keep thinking sometimes about, I really wish this was in HD and I could be watching it on Blu-ray. It would just look a little more sharper.
Yeah. I love DS9. If I had to choose, I'd probably say it's my favorite to go back and rewatch. And I would love, obviously, to have that remastered in high definition. So maybe someday, Voyager would be great as well. Some great visual effects in Voyager I'd love to see realized in high def. So.
Yeah. You know what we need to do? We need to get everybody to watch DS9 and Voyager on Paramount Plus or whatever service you have. Watch them over and over and over again. So all of a sudden Paramount's like, wow, the numbers are really gone up on these series. Maybe we should release them on Blu-ray. Now's the time.
Yeah, it was a huge investment for them to do it for TNG, and we've seen numerous articles over the years why it would be so expensive for them to do DS9 and Voyager, because they'd have to redo all the visual effects, basically, is one of the big problems. So, yeah, I don't know. I would love to see it happen.
Well, never say never, because this leads us into our next story, and that is the motion picture, because I remember when the director's cut came out, and people wanted to do that on Blu-ray and HD or whatever. They were saying, oh, we'd have to redo some of the special effects. It's going to cost a lot of money, but yet they did it now. So you never know. Down the road, this stuff may get cheaper to do. That would be, fairly easy cost-wise to do DS9 and Voyager. So we'll see.
That would be, yeah, and we've also, I should say, seen a lot of fan efforts online where people have used AI programs to upscale Voyager and Deep Space Nine, which look pretty darn good. So maybe not quite as good as a studio released HD remaster would look, but some pretty great efforts out there that are worth checking out. So, but yeah, so there's some efforts out there. It'd be interesting to see what the studio could do, though.
Yeah, well, at least we do get Lower Decks on Blu-ray on July 12th. All the special features there. We'll check it out at that time. But going back to the motion picture, so we had the screenplay writer for the motion picture, Harold Livingston, recently passed away last Thursday morning. And he was 97 years old. So he led a really long life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a prolific novelist and writer. His most famous credit for us, of course, is Star Trek: The Motion Picture. He wrote for television shows Mission Impossible and $6 Million Man. Really a big loss, but huge huge contribution to the Star Trek universe, and definitely sad to see him pass away, but lived quite an interesting and prolific life as a writer in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how I wonder if he got to watch this remastered director's edition before he passed away. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. But because it's so beautiful, it looks great and sounds great and everything. But
yeah, it does credit to his original story, I think, for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Which, of course, the story was written by Alan Dean Foster, and here Harold Livingston wrote the screenplay from that story. But I like the fact, too, that he did the $6 Million Man, because back in the day, in the 70s, I was all into the $6 Million Man. I watched every episode. I had the little... I don't know if they called them action figures back then, but they were dolls, action figures, whatever. And so I used to have my $6 Million Man fighting Bigfoot and, the robot guy. I can't remember what his name was. And like things would pop off of the robot guy. And I even had Oscar Goldman. It was a thing until Star Wars came. Then I forgot all about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see also he wrote for Fantasy Island at one point. So very prolific writing career. Lots of shows, many of which I've not seen, but a few that I'm familiar with for sure.
Yeah, I've watched some of Fantasy Island. I didn't watch that much of it. And I've seen some Mission Impossible. So I may have seen some of his work on some of these shows.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, I think it's time we talk about Star Trek Picard, Hide and Seek, and we'll do that right after this brief message.
This episode of Positively Trek is brought to you by our wonderful supporters on Patreon, including our Constitution class supporters Jim Stoffel, Joyce Marin, Carl Morris, Dave Garcia, Rick Young, Paul D. Kinnear, John Blaber, and Jesse Earl. Thank you all so much for your support of the Positively Trek podcast. If you would like to become a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/positivelytrek. You can get early access to episodes, exclusive content, shoutouts, associate producer credits, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/positivelytrek. Thank you once again. And now let's get back to the show.
Can't be sad forever.
Do the math. In this or any other universe, you always lose. That's why you fight so hard. You live with the death knell of your species across infinite timelines. You fear loss just like we do. You long for what we all long for. Connection. Longevity. Discovery. Only you offer it without choice.
Wow, we are so close to the end. And I was really looking forward to this episode because I know it's the lead into the finale and things are going to start to ramp up. And so, Dan, how did you feel initially about this episode?
I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like the last few have kind of had issues that I wasn't, too keen on. The last episode, I think, was a bit of a uptick from those. And this one, I loved it. It's really exciting penultimate episode of season 2 leading us into the finale. And there's a lot of really interesting developments in this that I was pretty thrilled to see play out on my television screen.
Yeah, I was reading some people's comments online, which I typically avoid, but I decided to do that last night for some odd reason. And it goes back to what you said, I think, last week, is that some people were complaining that the season's been a little slow in the middle or a little boring. And I was reading many comments like that. And I've never really felt that way. I mean, to me, the pacing of the season has worked. And maybe it works for me because I like to spend a little more time with characters and not actually have to, jump to the next story beat and whatever. And just, I also feel like each episode kind of has its own little storyline in there, like the FBI agent, right? That was an episode, and this one, it's kind of more of the revelation of Picard's backstory that seems to be kind of self-contained in some of these episodes. So again, like you and I have said, I think binge watching this all at once is really going to be the payoff instead of waiting a week between each episode.
Yeah, and it's really the first time, I think, in Star Trek that's been the case for me, where I feel like it would benefit. I still would never, ever want them to do the Netflix style, let's drop a whole season at once thing, because, oh man, the podcasting we'd have to do for that. But I think this would benefit from a really quick binge watch for sure. But that said, I'm loving being able to talk about each chapter each week. And there's some interesting things that come out of those discussions that I feel like wouldn't happen if we had to talk about it all at once.
All right. Well, do we want to just jump into the episode now?
Let's jump into it. Let's talk about it.
Okay. Let's talk about the whole Borg thing. Okay, because the episode starts off with these Borg soldiers beaming onto the property of the chateau, and we have the green lights shining around from their weapons, which of course reminds you of the red beams that you would get from Borg moving around. But you know, when they start like shooting towards our friends over there at the chateau, in some ways I felt was a bit much. Like I would think that the soldiers would creep a little closer instead of just randomly just like that all the time. It just felt a little over the top for me. What about you?
I at first was kind of thinking along those lines, but then I was thinking, oh, they're kind of like the mindless automatons more than what we've seen before. If they were this crack group of soldiers, they would probably engage in a little bit more, tactics and stuff. But that's kind of how the Borg operate, right? They just kind of keep coming. They just kind of respond to stimuli and do their thing. And I felt that's kind of what they were trying to evoke, that these were like zombified, just kind of doing what the Borg would do. So I actually really liked that. I thought that made a lot of sense.
I'm glad you said that, because then I had that thought too. It started off with like, really, all these soldiers are just going to just start firing? I'm like, well, they are, like you said, Borgified. And actually, I mean, we're going to kind of jump all over the episodes because I just want to keep with certain themes. So thinking about the Borg, I was kind of bothered at first when I saw Raffi and Seven stab the one soldier with the knife.
That was a gruesome scene. Yeah.
But then it's like, well, thinking of that as a Borg kind of makes that easier for me than to think of it as a human soldier, Yeah.
I kept thinking throughout this episode with that and numerous other things that happen that, like, boy, if they're worried about the timeline and the butterflies, like, they've made a ton of changes now. Like, these soldiers, did they all die in the original timeline somehow? Like, there's got to be all these ripple effects from what they're doing, unless they're pulling an assignment Earth, where it turns out they were a part of what the history was supposed to happen all along or something. I don't know, but I'm like, oh man, they're killing this guy. They're beaming a bunch of people into the walls, and that's gotta. Are those bodies in those walls in the future now? When there's so much going on that I'm like, they're really messing with the timeline here.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you could always say, well, maybe Jean-Luc as a kid didn't get that far to see if bodies were in the wall when he was a kid, But yeah,
how horrifying would that be for a poor kid to see? Oh man. Oh, sorry.
Well, okay, that was another thing. So I didn't think about the first time I watched it. So I've watched it twice. How many times have you watched it?
Just the one time, yeah.
Okay. So when I watched it the second time and I saw that scene where the bodies are beamed into the walls, I thought, well, wait a sec. Like, what an odd choice to put him at those walls at that time when Jean-Luc and Talon are walking through it.
Well, I mean, they did that for like however many were on the ship, which was like 20 or 30 or something. So those two just happened to be there.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. It was a coincidence, but like, yeah.
Yeah, there could be bodies like all over that place.
Ooh.
But that was pretty cool. You've got to admit, if you're going to get rid of them, that's a good way to do it.
Well, what I appreciated about it, I mean, it's gruesome, but what I appreciated about it is how many times in Star Trek have we heard, we could beam inside solid rock, blah, blah, blah. Now we've actually seen what that's like. So There we go.
It takes me back to that Enterprise episode of the guy that had the debris.
Oh, yeah. Yep. The debris that contaminated the transporter stream. Yeah.
Yeah. I have nightmares about that. So does McCoy. So we also have Girardi as the Borg Queen / whatever. And I like at the beginning how she walks over to the actual body of the Borg Queen and kind of, merges with it in a sense. It becomes even more Borgified, as you would say. I mean, it's like that was pretty cool. So at that point, I started to think, I don't know if we have much hope for Girardi at this point.
Yeah, I was definitely fearing for her. There's some things in this episode that really turned me around on what they've done with her character, though. So there's some things I appreciated with what they're doing with her character here, which I wasn't anticipating.
Oh, I want to get to that. So do tell.
Okay, well, we'll just talk about the whole ending, I guess. So Girardi ends up being strong enough to basically influence the Borg Queen. And we get to see Girardi as herself a couple times in this episode interacting with the Borg Queen. And in previous episodes, I've talked about how disappointed I was that they're kind of doing what they did with her character in season 1, where she's being influenced and she's not really herself. But we get to see that script get flipped a little bit here. She influences the Borg Queen. And I really love that her personality and her humanity is strong enough to overcome what the Borg Queen has done with her. Not overcome it, but influence it and assert herself in a way that it looks like we're fundamentally changing the nature of the Borg now, which honestly, I thought that was the coolest dang thing, where she basically argues for a new way forward for the Borg. And I had thoughts in my mind as I was watching this. I was thinking of like the Kaliar from the Destiny series and all that sort of stuff. And the idea that the Borg could go forward not as a conquering force, but as a force for good in the galaxy. That's fascinating to me. And we were talking about the Borg soldiers, how much more effective the soldiers would have been if they were just left as soldiers and not turned into this hive mind zombie creatures. That kind of feeds into what happens at the end and what the Borg might be going forward now too. I think that's really cool.
I do too. I read some comments online, which, like I said, I try to avoid usually, but where people said it just seemed to happen a little too fast, that Girardi was able to do this and convince the Borg Queen. And I can see some of that, but this is also a TV show. But I also buy into it because they have been merged, for several episodes now, that I think one always has some kind of influence on the other, even emotionally, that there's this bond. So It's not as if a separate person named Girardi is talking to the Borg Queen and convinces her. They're melded into one person. So she can not just hear what Girardi's saying, but feel and really tap in her mind and see the logic. So if Girardi's bought into it, it may be easier for the Borg Queen to buy into it. And especially when she's having this adrenaline run where she's almost kind of winning over the Queen at this point. So she's going to have a little more strength over her. So that would work. And to your point then, this brings out a whole new concept for the Borg that could really play out to be interesting because, a lot of us have said, we're getting kind of tired with the Borg. Oh, here's the Borg again. Well, here's a new aspect of the Borg. Whether you like that direction or not, at least to me, that's an interesting direction to go in.
Yeah, it's different. And it's something fascinating. Like you said, an interesting direction. I also think because of just who Jurati is, that really made the difference here, because we've seen in previous episodes the Borg Queen is impressed by her. So she's probably a little more receptive and probably kept some part of her personality around longer than she would have if it was just someone else that she was, you know what I mean? Like, she would have just subsumed that and said, screw it. But she kept the Jurati personality around, and now she's able to kind of influence her and assert some dominance. And instead of just like disregarding it because it's Jurati, she's putting some value in that because she's previously impressed her. So I don't know. I think that all kind of factors in, and those little hints and seeds were there from the beginning, and I really appreciate that.
And then it kind of takes me back to the first episode of that Borg Queen we saw on the Stargazer, and it's like, okay, obviously, I'm guessing that's Jurati or some kind of influence of what we're getting from here to that Borg Queen, which makes me wonder, are there two types of Borg that are out there that we've never known about?
Yeah, that could very well be. And it seems that like what they said about the Borg in that episode, they are kind of on the up and up. Like, they want to maybe not join the Federation. They kind of said they want to join the Federation. I don't know if maybe that's the case, but they at least want to ally with the Federation or create some sort of relationship with them that we haven't seen before. And I like your thought that there may be two types of Borg out there now. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I keep thinking this somehow is going to play into season 3. I can't see all this just being like ended in this next episode that we're going to get on the finale of the season and just be done with it. This is going to continue on to season 3. It's got to.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's got to be the case at this point.
But aren't you worried about Jurati, though? I mean, I feel like we're never going to get that character back.
I don't know. See, because, like, if the timeline reverts, though, like, I don't know how that works, because Jurati was on the bridge there as well with Picard and Rios and all of them, and the Borg Queen. So if the timeline reverts, maybe they'll be all back to their normal selves, and this will have continued in the other timeline, which is crossed over into this one somehow. Or maybe just Q snaps his fingers and makes it all okay. I don't know. I have no idea.
No, that's a good point, because I believed all along that we're going to kind of reset, for the most part, our characters back into the 25th century, and Elnor's going to be there, and we've learned whatever lesson we've needed to learn, and we have memories of the past. At least these characters do, is what I'm getting at. But you just said these events that we're seeing here could affect this other timeline. But remember, Jurati is pointing out to the Borg Queen that they always lose at some point, no matter what timeline. So with the Borg Queen knowing that, or the Jurati Borg Queen knowing that, they're going to want to influence what the Borg do in other timelines, including the Prime timeline. So yeah, I can see where it crosses timelines, because they're not going to just think about that's not the way the Borg thinks. They don't think in terms of just this timeline. They are aware of other timelines.
Yeah, as we've learned, the Queen is receptive to all the different permutations and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where my mind was going as well.
I mean, I find this like very interesting. To me, this is a really good payoff to this season. I mean, whether, again, reading comments online, there's people who love this season and people who don't like this season, but then I think this is an interesting concept regardless.
Yeah, I'm definitely into it.
Me too. So since we're talking about the ending, let's go ahead and talk about this Renee thing, because my wife was asking me after the episode, what do you think? What do you think? When Jurati says that there needs to be two Renees, one who lives, another that dies. And my wife kept saying to me, what do you think that means? What do you think? And I want to ask you, Dan, what do you think?
I honestly am not sure what they're going for. Like, on the face of it, you could say, okay, they need to have one timeline go forward that turns into the Federation and one that turns into the Confederation. I don't know why that would be, though. And for some reason, my brain also went to Picard's nephew, Rene, who died in the fire in Generations. And I'm like, could that be something? I mean, like, the more I think about it, the more I think, like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that, but that did kind of flit through my mind briefly. So I have no idea. I don't know.
That went through my mind too. And I said that to my wife. I feel like it's a bit of a stretch, because if somebody's really not that familiar with Star Trek Generations, they might be a little lost to introduce that piece into it. But I don't know. But I thought maybe it's her way of saying, you know, this Renee needs to live, but Jean-Luc also has to accept the fact that the other Renee had to die. Just like he needs to accept that his mother passed away. It's not his fault. It's not his fault that Renee, his nephew, passed away. He needs to move on. Like,
yeah.
But I do feel like it's a bit of a stretch, because that concept of his nephew has never been introduced in this season at all.
Yeah, it would feel like a really weird time to just kind of insert that into the season. It doesn't ring true for me, but yeah, I don't know. This one's got me at a bit of a loss. I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure what they mean. And I'm sure when they reveal it, I'm going to be like, oh, okay. But
I wonder if Picard knows what it means, because he was so quick to dismiss it. You know, it's like, hey, the Girardi Borg Queen had a message for you, Picard. Oh, that's okay. We need to move forward. Like, I don't care. Like, you would think he'd take a moment and go, what is she trying to tell us? Is there a clue here? Maybe there's something we need to know.
Oh, see, I totally interpreted that differently, because there's some weird editing at the end, I do have to say. And I kind of commented on this when I was watching this with Nikki as well. But he gets the message and he's like, huh. And then it looks like he gets it or something. He's like, oh, we need to move quickly. And then moves on. So I thought he like, oh, I get it. I know what that means. And they're going to go do something. And I'm just like, I don't know what it means though. But Picard, I thought did. So I don't know.
I kind of felt like he got it, but just dismissed it.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I totally interpreted that differently. Where he's like, oh, I know what I have to do now. We have to go do this thing.
Oh, now I want to go back and rewatch it again. I don't know why. I just felt like he was just dismissive of it. Like he didn't want to acknowledge it or something. Like, oh yeah, no. That is almost, but you're right. When you said the editing, I thought the editing was a little awkward, like a little quick.
It felt like there was a weird jump there, like they cut something out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's jarring, because I feel like his tone and how he's talking changes very abruptly there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we're talking about Jean-Luc, let's just go ahead and talk about his whole backstory and how this plays out. So one thing I want to say is I can't say I was surprised of the result of this story, of the hidden past that he's locked away and what happened. I mean, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew something not good with his mother. But I have to say, I love the way they did the whole reverse storytelling where everything was moving backwards. I thought that was a great direction.
Yeah, and him wanting to undo that moment. And yeah, that was striking visually for sure.
But how did you feel about his mother hanging herself? That whole storyline and how it affects him.
Obviously, I'm very sad for Jean-Luc, and I thought that was very sad.
No, I guess what I'm trying to get is that do you like how the writers decided to do something tragic like this to his mother to make this the thing that prevents Picard in his life from having connections to others?
I feel like it makes sense for his character. You know, I feel like it kind of, he doesn't need some big tragic thing to propel him to be this kind of person. It's okay to be that kind of person otherwise, but I thought it was interesting to give him that backstory and to kind of flesh that out and see how it affected him. I think Patrick Stewart played it very well, and I think it works with what we've learned of Picard. I did appreciate, as a diehard Star Trek fan, the fact that they went back and kind of papered over the fact that we see his mother as an old woman in his imaginings in the first season episode Where No One Has Gone Before. And they have Picard mention that he even imagined her as an old woman into his adulthood, offering him a cup of tea and a chat. And that's exactly what happened in that episode. I loved that. I'm like, the writers are paying attention, because obviously they've gone back and watched that episode, because I think that's the only time, or one of the few times, that Picard's mother is even mentioned or a name is even given, right? So they're aware of that backstory. So I appreciated how they incorporated that and made that make sense.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that TNG episode again, knowing this, right?
Yeah, the best additions to canon add another layer to things that we've seen before, and I feel like, obviously not the intention of the writers the first time around when they wrote it, but this new edition just adds to that and adds to the tapestry. It's similar to how we found out that, Spock when he decided not to go to Starfleet and his father didn't speak to him for so long, it was also because Sarek had reserved that spot for Spock, denying it to Michael Burnham, and he felt guilt over that. I love that. I think that's really cool.
I like how they're given the opportunity to write backstories to characters like that and make it so it didn't play out the way you thought it did. It's, you just assumed X, Y, and Z, but it was really more A, B, and C,
Yeah. Yeah. And not in a way that feels forced or not genuine, right? It feels like they haven't said that, like, oh, his mother was actually a shapeshifter who blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something crazy. It fits with what came before,
Yeah, I like that. I mean, whether you like it or not, I mean, you don't have to accept it, because the writers of the original characters weren't thinking these as backstories. They weren't written in the character bios in the Bible of the series. This is what these other writers and creators are putting a spin to. But I do enjoy that. But the thing I feel sad about for Jean-Luc, of course, losing his mother, but I really want him to know that it's not his fault. It's not his fault that his mother did this. Yes, he opened the door, but he was also a child. He didn't know. His father never sat down and explained to him, and no one ever sat down and explained what was going on with it. He wouldn't have known. He would have no idea. He shouldn't carry that burden. He could carry the pain and the hurt that he lost his mother. And I mean, it's easy to say it's not your fault. But he also knows that, yes, but had I not opened the door, she would be alive. But it's not his fault. It's just, I hope that's addressed a little more, maybe even in the next episode.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I made this comment while we were watching this episode. So many pieces of media right now, and maybe this has always been the case and I just wasn't receptive to it, but it feels like so much of what we're watching right now has to do with intergenerational trauma. Like, that seems like something that we are really tackling and really exploring right now. That's obviously come up here in Picard. We're also watching Moon Knight right now, Marvel series, which that's a huge part of the latest episode that just aired on Wednesday, before this one aired on Thursday. Very similar themes in those two episodes. And the movie Encanto is basically about intergenerational trauma and that sort of thing. So I'm just noticing all this stuff, and it feels like something we're really tackling. Turning Red, another Disney Pixar movie, same thing about intergenerational trauma. It feels like something we're really tackling as a society right now.
I also was thinking about Robert. in this situation, to your point about intergenerational trauma. It's like, how does this affect Robert? Of course, Robert isn't in this episode. It's mentioned in an earlier episode that he's off at school, so that's why we don't see him. But how does the death of his mother affect him, and what does he know about it? I would assume that no one told him that Jean-Luc unlocked the door for her, But I wonder if he does know that.
Yeah, if it came out, if he found out some way. I think part of again, just adding another layer to canon, the fact that he's so cold with his brother could very much have something to do with that he's so cold towards Jean-Luc. Even if he doesn't know that Jean-Luc did this and doesn't blame him that way, the fact that Jean-Luc got to be home to speak with his mother and be with her at a time when he couldn't because he was away at school, that would be enough really to have some sort of cold feelings and some sort of feelings of regret and anger towards Jean-Luc, So I think that's interesting. I think that adds another layer that, may not necessarily be there, but I think you could interpret it that way.
That makes me want to go back and watch Family now.
Absolutely.
Because it will be fun to watch all these different episodes that, now you may look at it a little differently. You're going to think about these characters in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be good. Talon, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot for her character in this. I really enjoy her character, but she's helping Jean-Luc through the process of figuring things out, but we're not really learning anything more about her in this episode. It's just more of like her just kind of, pushing him just a little more to think things through and accept it. So, I guess that's all I have to say. There really isn't, unless you have anything to say about this character, but I don't have much to say about her in this episode.
Yeah, I just appreciated her role with Jean-Luc there, and she's basically the one to have found out all this, and she's the one to tell Jean-Luc it's not your fault and that sort of thing. So I think she was important to the story in that sense. I still love Orla Brady. I think she's incredible, and even though she's in this episode a limited amount, the part she plays I love her.
Yeah, I do too.
Lifelong crush on Orla Brady. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, it's almost like I still want just a little more of her. I guess that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like, oh, we got her in this, but it's kind of wish I had a little more of her. But anyway, we're just glad we're getting more of her this season than we did last season. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do want to talk real quick because I'm picturing her and Jean-Luc in the greenhouse where Soong confronts them after going through the tunnels, playing hide and seek per se, and, traps them like a mouse in a maze, or he knows you get the mouse to come out of the maze. But okay. Two things I want to mention. Like, Soong just is the most annoying character of the season for me. I'm just so over him.
Yeah. Oh, he's awful. I don't have much to say about him either, other than, yeah.
I still don't really understand his purpose. I feel like I'm missing something. Like, why is he there? Why does the Queen need him?
I think just, yeah, he wants his legacy, and that's what ushers in the Confederation future and that sort of thing. And they want to stop Renee. That's the whole thing, I guess. And he's now wants his legacy. He wants to be the famous person that ushers in the future. Yeah.
That just seems weak. Meaning that I just don't see why the Queen needs him. Why he's tagging along. If she gets,
he got her the army. That's basically what she used him for. Yeah. I don't, that was spelled out in the last week's episode. I think that's the whole reason. She's a user, right? She uses people. She wanted an army of people to take the ship. That was her whole goal.
Okay, so where did he go then when Rios shows up? By the way, I love the scene and I didn't love the scene. Just so
yeah. There's a bit of convenient stuff there for sure.
Yeah, so I love how earlier in the episode Rios gets hit by one of the guns, gets shot in the arm, and they transport him back to Talon's apartment, and he's there with Teresa and Ricardo. And again, I like the scenes between, this couple, these two characters, and he's prevented from beaming back. Jean-Luc had them block him from coming back, but he's able to override the system. And of course, they have to kiss before he goes back, all that stuff. But then why did he beam into the greenhouse, Stan? Why there?
Probably. I don't know. He used the sensors to determine where everyone was and read the script to see where the most opportune place to be would be, I guess. I don't know. That part was a little bit like, okay, this is very Hollywood at this point. But yeah. I did roll my eyes a little bit at that, I'll admit.
I did have the thought of him, well, where am I going to beam to? Oh, I'm registering. Here's where Picard is. I'll beam to where he is, knowing that he is being chased. I need to be ready in case there's soldiers after him at this point. So I'll have my gun ready. So it's like, okay, yeah, this can work. But I have to say, when he beams in and he's got his gun there ready at Soong, I was like, yes, Han Solo, come to the rescue. That's what it felt like to me. If he could beam in. But I love then how Soong gets the gun and you start to hear the whine of the gun reaching, and he's like, oh, I've got the gun now. He's like, yeah, but it's got this DNA sensor and it's going to explode if it doesn't recognize your DNA.
I wish he just not said anything. We could be rid of him by now. He'd be like, what's this noise it's making? Boom. But no, he lives to Soong another day. Ugh.
I guess he ran away because he tosses the gun, it goes boom, and then he's just not there.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish he was just gone.
I know. I would have been very satisfied if that happened. But let's just assume he was. That would again change the timeline.
Yeah, right? It would. He does need to escape to, yeah. Unless, I don't know, Corey is out there. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't know. He's got to clone himself or have a kid or something.
I really thought we'd see Corey on the beach in this episode.
I know. Yeah, I think she's gone. I think she's done though for the season.
Yeah, I think
she just
right.
Walked out of Soong's life and that's it.
Yeah, because I don't know how you bring her back in.
Yeah, maybe, episode. But yeah, I think she's done.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Seven and Raffi. This is, I like the storyline for these. This really was focusing really on both characters. I was going to say on Seven, but really on Raffi's relationship with Elnor and what she's been going through. So when Girardi brings up the hologram of Elnor, I'll have to admit I did an eye roll at first. But it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's
an emergency combat hologram, one we've not seen before. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. If you're going to program something like that, well, I mean, she still could have made it look like Rios, like all the other holograms, but she did a dead person, Elnor, but he has these incredible combat skills. So, that makes sense. But, I have to say, I always enjoy an Elnor combat scene. So I was enjoying him taking down these soldiers.
Yeah. And I mean, I love Evan Evagora. I wish the actual character of Elnor was in this a bit more, but just seeing him and like you said, the combat scenes, he's so good. It's great to watch.
Well, then he has that scene with Raffi and he quickly says, I'm a hologram. When she's like, Elnor, I'm a hologram. Oh, he's got the emitter.
Yeah. That was interesting.
I wasn't expecting that. I thought there were holo emitters throughout the ship. That's
kind of what I thought. I think they had to, because at one point I was like, why are the soldiers firing at, and I mean, again, they're zombified Borg who aren't thinking whatever, but they're shooting at a hologram. What the heck? And then I realized, oh, he's got that emitter. So maybe he's got to make sure that doesn't get hit. But yeah, that was an odd choice.
does that mean that we're going to see this hologram Elnor in the future? That this is our new Elnor?
Oh, that would be interesting. He could go with them outside. Wait, is he still with the ship that the Borg Queen took, though? Or...
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that.
Hello? Where did everybody go? Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, okay, well, maybe we'll see that in the next episode, right?
Yeah, I didn't think of that until just this moment.
I didn't either until you said it. I was like, oh, yeah, he's got to still be on the ship. Either that or he snuck off the ship and we're like, oh, okay, there he is. No, I bet he kind of helps take control of the ship back. I don't know.
I don't think they're getting the ship back. I think the Queen's taken it now to turn the Borg good.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's, I don't think they're taking the ship back. They traded the ship for Seven's life, right?
Yeah, I know, but I just didn't know if Elnor will try to take the ship back for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, the Borg are going to be good now. Oops, stab. Well, Elnor's ruined it.
Oh, I want to know what Elnor knows. Does he even know what's going on? Like the poor guy.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was strange was it's nice to see there's that scene between Elnor and Raffi, and the hologram says that he has memories of the real Elnor's final breaths and knows enough to know that his last feelings would not have been of blame, but of love. And I'm like, okay, so how does the hologram know that exactly? That seemed a little odd, but it's convenient.
I feel like it's in the medical database, you know, he's tied into the ship. And so but how would even that system know his memory, like his thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I was wondering that too. And then how does Teresa know how to use a tricorder, right?
That one I didn't mind as so the previous episode where she uses the thing to stabilize him, that kind of bugged me because like how does she know how to use that and that sort of thing. But this time around it's a tricorder and Ryosa says, "Oh, use this." I feel like it's probably a little more user friendly and she can look at it and see, oh, there's an outline of his body and there's where the thing is. And, you know, I feel like that's a little bit more user friendly and the scene kind of ends there. So we don't see what happens further. And I feel like that makes more sense that Rios could have like shown her a bit about how to use it and she kind of figures that out. So that didn't bug me this time as much as the previous one did.
Yeah, same here. It didn't bother me as much, but I did have the thought like, okay, she's able to figure this out pretty easy. I can't even get my parents to figure out their iPhones. And Teresa can just use this tricorder just like that. But yeah. But then we've got Seven and her journey in this. And we find out that she did try to join Starfleet, but they wouldn't have her because she was Borg.
Yeah.
But yet they took Icheb into Starfleet in a Borg. So what do you think about that?
I've seen some people talking about this online, and I wish I could credit who originally was saying this, but fans are good at making things make sense. And I'm like, okay, all right. So somebody was saying that like, well, Icheb wasn't a part of the collective as long. He was still a kid when he was rescued from the Borg. And so maybe there's some there. He hasn't assimilated thousands of people like Seven has and that sort of thing. And then someone else mentioned that 7 of 9 has a cortical node in her head and Icheb doesn't because he donated his to 7 to keep her alive. So maybe it's the cortical node that's like a security risk for Starfleet or something like that. And I was like, okay, Star Trek fans, y'all be clever. I don't know. I don't think that's what the writers were thinking when they wrote that or anything, but I'm like, that's interesting. I love that fans are able to come up with, you know, creative explanations for things. So I don't know, maybe I'll incorporate that into what to make that make sense. But I think even just the fact that Seven spent most of her life as a Borg and assimilated thousands of individuals and stuff, there might be some jerk on the admissions board that voted against her because of something like that. so who knows, right?
Yeah, that's where my mind went. I read the one theory you mentioned about the cortical node thing and stuff. And, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was more an age thing where Icheb was still young. He wasn't as part of the collective like Seven was. So maybe they were able to kind of give him a pass, but didn't feel quite comfortable putting Seven there. Even though, as she said, Janeway was, willing to leave Starfleet over it,
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little Janeway drop in this episode.
That was nice. I appreciated that.
Yeah. And she also mentioned Voyager. She said, after Voyager, I tried to join Starfleet. So it was good to hear her talking Voyager and Janeway in this episode. But then, she gets injured from the Borg Queen. And we were talking earlier about Girardi and the Borg Queen coming to this new Borg philosophy of life. And then the Borg Queen saves Seven's life. But then she gets her Borg implants back, which, she doesn't seem all that happy with, but, she is, glad that she's alive again. But I like the exchange that she has with Raffi, who talks about, no matter who Seven is, she's still one of the most extraordinary person that she's ever met, So I like that exchange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of great Seven Raffi moments here. And yeah, Seven kind of coming to realize through Raffi that, she needs to be herself, right? And to accept that part of her. And I love that the Borg Queen Girardi says they intend to make a collective of sevens, make people like Seven. I was like, that's cool. She's like the template for this new Borg order, I guess.
Yeah. I like the scenes with Raffi and Seven and Raffi telling Seven that, she's always running, and what if you just stop? Why don't you just stop, And I almost feel like, Raffi could learn from that too herself, I mean, we all can. We just need to stop, just take that moment and stop running and just be in the moment. Just be who you are or whatever, I've been seeing all these comments online about the refit NX-01 is now canon. So did you notice that watching this episode?
I didn't. I had to see that in a post originally shared. I can't remember by who, but I saw Doug Drexler had shared it online from that original post. And that's pretty cool. It's the Eagle Moss NX-01 refit model that I actually happen to
Dan has it
right here. So yeah, that's...
Look at you. You and little Jean-Luc have the same model.
Yep. That just goes to show the quality of Eagle Moss models. They last hundreds of years. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, that's cool. I wish I'd noticed it in the episode, but that's awesome it's now canon. We've seen it on screen.
In my head canon, Dan, that model that you just held in your hand will get passed on to generation to generation and eventually end up in Jean-Luc's possession.
Yep, there you go.
So, well, overall thoughts about this episode?
I really enjoyed this one. I think it's a great penultimate episode. I'm really curious to see where this all goes now. We've gotten some idea of what's going to happen with the Borg. I hope that's a really interesting permanent change that we see go forward, and whatever form that takes, whatever that looks like, I'm really fascinated to see that. Oddly satisfied with where Alison Pill's Girardi ends up this season, even though I thought I wouldn't be. So kudos to the writers for making me get on board with that. That was pretty cool. I did wonder when Picard sees Rios and Teresa why he didn't yell at like, what is she doing here? What's going, what?
Yeah,
there's butterflies being killed all over the place here. So yeah, I don't know. They seem to have really mucked around with the timeline more than just giving Dr. Nichols the formula for transparent aluminum ever did. So boy, I don't know. But yeah, I'm really curious to see where it goes. I'm enjoying all of this, and the character exploration is what I love out of Star Trek, and we're getting lots of that for sure. So yeah, I'll have to give this, I think, 4.5 reformed Borg collectives out of 5.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. The characters, I love their interactions. I love what they're doing with the characters. I like the result of the Jean-Luc backstory. Although I wasn't surprised by it, we kind of been building and giving little hints as we've been going along through the series. I mean, I didn't know how his mother died or exactly what was going to happen, but this kind of fit into the direction I thought they would go in. I even liked even Soong figuring out the secret door. I'm like, wait, I bet I know. I just thought that was funny for some reason. But, and yeah, Teresa and Rios, I like their interchange with each other. And I like, of course, Seven and Raffi and bringing Elnor in. I love seeing Elnor. And that was a little cheesy to bring him back as the hologram, but it makes sense. If Jari's going to do somebody, might as well do Elnor. So, yeah, I guess I'm just looking forward to seeing how this wraps up in the next episode. I hope it's not too rushed. I think it's going to be okay. I think the pacing is going to work out. I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I'm going to give this episode 4 out of 5 swords that Elnor found on the ship.
Ooh, I like it.
So, Dan, we have the finale coming out this Thursday. We also have the premiere of Strange New Worlds coming out this Thursday. There's a lot coming up.
It's going to be a big episode next week. Boy, I can't wait. I'm very excited, both for the finale of Picard and for the premiere of Strange New Worlds. So, yeah, I'm on board for all the Star Trek.
Yeah, me too. And just so people know, there's some people out there that do podcasts and blogs and whatever else that have gotten some advanced episodes. We haven't. So when we're saying, we can't wait to see, we really haven't seen anything. So I'm really curious to see how these play out. I'm very excited about it, about the finale and seeing a premiere of this new series. But I will say about this, I want to ask you this real quick about the finale. Are you hoping we don't have a cliffhanger, or do you want a cliffhanger?
That's a good question. I'm kind of torn on it in that I'm not the biggest fan of cliffhangers, but at the same time, I'd rather have a bit of a cliffhanger than have it all wrapped up really quickly, really fast. Like, I feel like the 21st century stuff, that's going to get wrapped up. That's going to have a bow on it. That's going to be done. But that situation we saw at the start of the second season on the Stargazer, I feel like there'll be like a little bit of a wrap up of that, but whatever that situation they're in there is, I hope that's kind of left a little open to continue into season 3. Maybe they have something completely different planned than what I'm imagining in my head, but I feel like that needs to not be completely wrapped up, if that makes sense.
It's exactly how I feel. I mean, if they don't have the cliffhanger, that's fine. But I do kind of wish they have like you said, like a small cliffhanger or something where the season feels like it's wrapped up, but then there's this loose end that we end the season with going, now we know where that's going into the next season. I want to see how this plays out. I want that moment. Considering the fact that they filmed these back to back pretty much at the same time, these 2 seasons, they would know the direction they're going in season 3, I would assume. So,
yeah,
why not do that? I mean, it's always painful to wait, but I would like to know that there's a bridge between this season and next season.
For sure. Absolutely.
So that being said, Dan, where can people find you online if they want to talk about Picard or Strange New Worlds or any Star Trek with you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Kertrats. That's KERTRATS. Also, youtube.com/Kertrats Productions. And of course, in the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook.
And you can find me on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. That's Admiral with the underline Rex. And I'm also on Instagram at just Admiral Rex, no underline. And you can find me in our Goodreads group where we post upcoming books that we're going to cover on the book club episodes. And you can find this show on Twitter at Positively Trek and also on Instagram at Positively Trek. You can send us an email, positivelytrek@gmail.com. And yeah, look for our Facebook discussion group. We'll let you in. A lot of positive fans in there. having good conversations about Star Trek and posting some fun stuff too. And we'd like to thank our patrons on Patreon for all your support. It does cost us money to produce and distribute this show, so that support really does help us a lot. And of course, thank you to all the listeners for tuning in each and every week to hear us ramble on about Star Trek stuff. So thanks everyone for joining us. And until next time, go out in the world and stay positive.